So let's move on to number 19. Number 19. If x equals -4, what is the value of y in the equation x squared minus xy minus 36 equals 0? So number 19, you're entering the charted territories of the more difficult medium level questions because they don't give you the value for both variables. They only give you the value for one variable, x. And what they want you to do is they want you to deduce the value for y based on what they've given you for x. So let's get started. The first step, and it's a pretty clear first step you have to do, is you have to substitute -4 in for x to simplify the question and make it easier to work with. So let's do that. X squared is going to be simplified down to -4 squared minus -4 times y minus 36 equals 0. So let's simplify this now. -4 squared, that is going to be -4 times -4 equals 16. Minus -4, a minus and a minus, that's going to yield a plus, because if you subtract the negative number, what ends up happening is you get the opposite product, the opposite operation, which is going to be a positive sign. So negative minus -4, that's going to be plus 4y, since y still is not solved for, minus 36. All of that is going to be equal to 0. So this is going to be more easier to work with now because we've substituted our values in for x, and all that's really left for us to do now is to go back to our regular algebra and simply isolate the y. So let's do that. Let's start by getting rid of this 36. So we're going to add 36 to both sides so that the left side goes to 0 and that this right side becomes 36. And everything else is going to stay the same. 16 plus 4y equals 36. And next, what you're going to do is you're going to substitute the y even further by subtracting 16, because it's a positive 16 on the left side. And when you subtract 16 to both sides, you put 0 on the left side, so there's no number left there. And then 4y is going to equal 36 minus 16. That equals 20. And from there, it's pretty fundamental. Divide 4 to both sides. You're left with y equals 20 over 4. And 20 over 4 is equal to 5, which is answer choice D. So, one of your more difficult questions because it doesn't give you the two substituted values for the variables outright. But if you remember your algebra, if you don't panic, it's easy to deduce that second variable just by substituting and working through things slowly. So, number 20, more of your difficult questions, since they're only going to get harder from here. What is the largest integer value of z that satisfies the inequality 13 over 15 is greater than z over 13? See, there are two ways to go about this type of problem. The first way you could try and go about this type of problem is just by substituting in every single value given to you as an answer choice for z, and looking to see whether or not they are in fact less than 13 over 15. Or you can do the test prep strategy and try to omit going down that path by just starting with answer choice H and working your way up from there. So what I mean by that is, for one, we need to take the value of 13 over 15 to know what we're working with for sure. 13 over 15 is equal to 87. Calculator work is right there. It looks pretty blurry, but it says 0.8666. So that equals 0.87. And the rest of these numbers that are plugged in for z have to equal to a number that is less than 0.87. So going off the strategy I just discussed, let's start with 10 because it's in the middle. So 10 divided by 13. 10 divided by 13 equals 0.769. which can be rounded to about 0.77. And the reason why we start off with 10 is because now that I've seen that 10 yielded a quotient of 0.77, I know that in order to get closer to 0.87, I have to go higher. So now that I've gone higher, I can eliminate F and G and H now, simply by saying that 10, simply by first going for the result with 10. So now that I've eliminated all three of those answers, let's go down further. 11 over 13 yields a result of pretty close, 0.8461. So 0.85, that's pretty close to 0.87. And at this point, I'm getting the feeling that 11 is 90%. I'm 90% sure that 11 is the correct answer. But just so I don't make any frivolous mistakes, I'm just going to divide 12 into 13 now, which is in fact above 0.87. It's 0.92. So with this method, you get J as the correct answer, because 0.85 is the highest number that is less than 0.87 out of the three. And with this method, you saved a lot of time, because had you divided and substituted each and every one of these answer choices, you would have gotten to your answer a lot slower. So use those test prep strategies you find on the internet or that your teachers teach you. They're very important in the long run. But let's move on. Number 23, which is pretty far off from this angle that I given. Let me fix this camera. There we go. It's a little better, but we can work with it. Number 22. 7 plus x over 2 is equal to 3x minus 8. Then x equals what? So let's go about solving this the way we normally would. So off the bat, 7 plus x over 2 equals 3x minus 8. The first thing we want to do is isolate the x. And by doing that, you're going to subtract 7 on both sides. It's going to go to 0 on the left side. And of course, you're left with x over 2 equals 3x minus 15. And now that you've done that, since you have a 2 in the denominator, what you're going to do is you're going to subtract 2 to both sides, so that the 2 cancels out to the left. And I'm going to go more into that after I solve this. We're going to subtract 2 to both sides. The 2 is going to cancel out. And when the 2's cancel out, you're left with x equals 6x minus 30, because the 2 is because you distribute the 2 to each of the numbers to the right side. Another thing I should have explained. We're going to distribute the 2 to the 2 numbers on the right side. And when you do that, you're left with x equals 6x minus 30. And after that, you can just isolate the 30, since you've already got the 6 pretty much near there. You're going to subtract negative 6 to both sides. You're stuck with negative 5x equals negative 30. You divide both sides by negative 5. And you're stuck with x equals negative 30 divided by negative 5. 30 divided by 5 equals 6, which is your correct answer. So, why did I multiply both sides by 2? Because the 2 was in the denominator. Let me go into that more at the bottom of the paper. I'm going to go into that more at the bottom of the paper. So, it may look confusing at first, but whenever you see something like x over 2 equals 3x minus 8, you wouldn't consider to subtract both sides by 2, because when you see the fraction, you sort of forget that it's a division process happening. So what you have to mentally do is you have to be mentally prepared to look at it like this. X divided by 2 equals 3x minus 8. When you see it like this, you remember that with algebra and with all order of operations, you have to do the opposite value of what you're given. So the opposite of division is going to be subtraction, and you go about solving it like this. You multiply times 2 to both sides, and of course it cancels out there, and then you distribute there. So if you've always been confused as to why that rule is the way it is, this is another way for you. This is another way for you to visualize it. You have to remember that the fraction means division, and if it makes it any simpler, and if it simplifies the process even more for you, you can always go back to this elementary style of writing division, the division sign, to make it more clear for you. But I just wanted to explain that process because I know when I started out with this type of question, I never understood why the teacher would multiply 2 to both sides. It was confusing, but yeah. Let's move on to number 23. Number 23. If m plus 3m plus 2 equals 30, then m equals what? So m plus 3m. Let me rewrite this so y'all can see it more clear. I know my camera's not capturing everything as best as I hope it could, but it's whatever. So m plus 3m plus 2 equals 30. This is pretty easy. M plus 3m, we can combine those since they're like terms. You're going to get 4m plus 2 equals 30. Since you want to isolate the m, you're going to subtract 2 to both sides. When you do that, you're stuck with 4m equals 28. And of course, you divide both sides by 4 since you need to isolate the m to get it completely by itself. When you do that, you get m to equal 7 since 28 over 4 equals 7. C is your correct answer. This is pretty straightforward, not that hard of a question to do, as long as you remembered those fundamentals. And so now, let me realign this camera real quick. So number 26, if x plus 18 equals the absolute value of negative 9, then x equals what? So this question is a lot easier than many people would think. The only step that might get in the way of your understanding of this question is if you've somehow forgotten what the absolute value sign means, or if you forget about the absolute value sign and you go about solving x in a way that yields a product of negative 9. But in order to simplify this, all you have to do is look at it like this. X plus 18 equals the absolute value of negative 9. Instead of putting an absolute value negative 9 there, all you have to do is put 9, because the absolute value of negative 9 is 9. And since you don't want any weird symbols in your math process, you want to be simple, you can just simplify this question that x plus 18 equals 9. And of course, you can go about this algebraically. Isolate the x value by subtracting 18 to both sides. Left with x equals negative 9. Answer choice G corresponds to that correct answer. So yeah, that question, they tried to make it more complicated than it really was, but if you can see through these cheap little ploys to make questions more difficult than they are, you should be fine.